Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Well, welcome everybody to the Must Read Alaska Show. I'm your host, John Quick, coming to you live from somewhere in Alaska. And it decided to get cold again in my neck of the woods. So it's went from a foot of snow to rain to slush to ice to now cold again. So we'll see what's in store for us here in the next week. But we're hoping everybody has had a great week after election week. And, you know, the storm hopefully calms down a little bit. And the world continues regardless of who folks voted for. So just know that if your candidate didn't win, just pick yourself up by the bootstraps and keep trekking on. Don't go lean on to negative keyboard warrior land. Just keep doing positive things in the world. And I think that that's probably the better option. We have a very exciting guest today. I'm very excited for this. A lot of our listeners really love and appreciate the association that she is the executive director of. So without further ado, I want to welcome the executive director of the Alaska Mining Association, Deantha Skibinski. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So you are the executive director of the Alaska Miners Association, which when folks hear about mining in Alaska, they probably first think about the TV shows, the gold mining shows, and those kinds of things. But it actually turns out there's people mining for stuff in Alaska. So tell me a little bit about the Miners Association, how it got started and why it got started.
So it's actually an incredibly interesting story. So we were founded in 1939, way before statehood, obviously. And we have to assume that this was done at a time we had gold rushes happening in the state, right? This is post-Klondike gold rush. That there's, rushes of Nome. And so there was activity going on around the state surrounding the mining industry. And it became pretty clear to these guys early on, not much different than we are today, that there was a need to organize and discuss opportunities and challenges and issues and share information. So you have to assume this was like Pony Express type communication. But, they organized the Alaska Miners Association in August of 1939. So very cool. And we ended up evolving over the years in many different ways. Today, we have 8 statewide branches. So we're as far north as Nome, as far south as Ketchikan, Prince of Wales Island. We're in Anchorage, Fairbanks, Denali, Kenai, Juneau, Haines, and Nome. And so we're all around. And so, 1939 to today, and still organizing to share information and discuss challenges and opportunities.
That's awesome. So how did you get involved? It's an organization that's been around a long time and I'm sure has a very rich history, ups and downs and challenges. What was your path to getting involved in the Alaska Miners Association?
I had a bit of it was an interesting path for sure. I worked at the Resource Development Council, another trade association in Alaska. I was primarily doing tourism industry issues at the time. And the longtime executive director of AMA was retiring. And we had some board members in common that came to me and said, you should consider applying for this position. And I was very confused by that suggestion. I have a political science degree. I'm not a geologist. I'm not an engineer. I was like, I don't know anything about that. But they told me at the time, and gosh, it's true on a daily basis for me that the trade association is an education into the mining industry. So we need you to come help us with communications. We need a better profile in the state of Alaska. We need to educate the public about how modern our industry really is. And we'll teach you the mining stuff. And that's exactly what happened. I started in June of 2012. So 10 years ago. Wow.
That's awesome.
And didn't know.
Congratulations on your 10-year anniversary.
Thanks. Yeah. So that's how I got there or here, I guess. And still learning every single day. Some days I'm like, I don't know anything still, but I know a lot of people that do.
Welcome to the club. I'm the king of the club. So tell me about, I'm sure, depending on which administration, whoever is the president of the US probably has its ups and downs. Most people think whether it's, Trump in office or Biden in office, they're just going to keep going about their day. My guess is some of those decisions actually affect associations like yours. So tell me about Biden seems to be very either not care or secretive, or the list goes on about these minerals that are hard to get, and they're only in certain places in the world. Some of them seem to be in Alaska. What's his stance been on mining, and how has that affected Alaska?
It's interesting. Obviously when the administration changed, under the Trump administration, we saw, like him or not, he appointed some incredibly capable people across the agencies and departments that matter for resource development in our country. And there were incredible reforms happening to, keep our environmental standards. You've got me on my soapbox now. All of our environmental standards that industries like mining have to meet are rooted in law. So there's never been a proposed change to law that would weaken the environmental performance of the mining industry. But there were sweeping reforms to keep that strength of the environmental requirements, but make the actual permitting process more efficient, get rid of stuff that wasn't necessary or had an unnecessary burden to the regulated community. So we were in the process of seeing those reforms come out that would better our process. And when President Biden was elected, we thought perhaps we would see a change in the desire for those reforms. But we were initially encouraged. Right away, he came out with his goals for a transition to alternative energies and electric vehicles and battery storage and things like that. All of these things requiring multitudes more minerals than we produce currently. So, and he and his, high up policy officials readily admitted that we need more mining to get this done to reach our goals. So we were initially encouraged, this is great. We can debate the merits of how quickly this energy transition will actually work. But on the other hand, he is readily, there's an admission that we need to do more mining in the United States. So we were initially encouraged by that. But I have to say that instead of the permitting reforms that we've talked about earlier, we have been dominated with the discussion of mining law reform and changing, taking a hard look at, is the mining industry, regulated adequately and appropriately? And so, so there's really
we have like the safest, most highest standards of probably any country out there, right, already.
And there are policy directives underway to kind of turn our system up, just completely turn it on its head. And so it not at all consistent with the goals the administration has outlined. We've been really trying to push and highlight that if you want to completely overhaul, is the word that has been used, how mining is permitted in the United States, you're going to take a bigger step back than anything you're trying to do from, getting more domestic mineral production. So that's pretty discouraging. I'm not even sure if I answered your question in my tirade there.
So how does somebody make a practical difference? Because that seems like a daunting task. The president of the United States decides that we're overhauling with probably little to no producers in the room helping him make that decision. If I'm in a gold mine in Alaska, how do I make a difference?
I think we just have to communicate. And we are starting to see some changes or some meaningful responses and meaningful feedback on the communication, things about transforming our dependence on minerals to achieve these goals. The number one highest mineral needed in electrification is copper. We don't produce enough of it. Cobalt is another big one. Right now, we are buying it from places where there are literally 5-year-olds working in cobalt mines.
There's no standards where we're buying
no standards. I mean, environmental standards, God no, but it goes worse than that. I mean, there are human rights issues associated with where we're getting some of them, and that matters to people. Even if they're not sure how they feel about the mine that's located near their community, they don't want to see mining happening with no standards, with treating small children really poorly. So those kinds of things, we are starting to make a difference in terms of opening eyes of, yes, we do an exceptional job here in Alaska, but also look at all the benefits that come from it. Look at the jobs, look at the revenue and that kind of thing. So miners are optimistic by nature, but I do think that people that are not readily familiar with the mining industry are starting to realize that we probably need to do this closer to home.
Yep. So let's talk for a second about Pebble Mine. It's been, if there's one thing that the average person has heard about mining in the last 10 years in Alaska, it's Pebble Mine, right? It keeps coming up. When Walker was the governor, he kind of squashed it, and at least that's kind of the layman's terms way of understanding it. And Dunleavy is definitely open to it, having that public process. It seems like, in having a fair shot of having a chance to become a mine that is producing materials. What's your guys' take on Pebble Mine, and do you think is there any hope for even just a fraction of the original idea to come to fruition?
I think so. So you're absolutely right. First of all, when you talk about mining in Alaska, I picked my son up from school like 2 weeks ago for the dentist appointment. And there was the office was really hectic, and they apologized to me. And I was like, oh God, no, you should see where I work. This is nothing. She's like, well, where do you work? And I said, oh, I work at a trade association for the mining industry. And she's like, oh, Pebble. But for better or for worse, the common knowledge of the Pebble issue has really highlighted what we have said for over a decade now, and it pains me to say that, that having the process in our country, the permitting process, be fair and reasonable and according to science and law is so important. And AMA's position has always been that a resource development project like a mining proposal has to be objectively evaluated. And we saw a preemptive veto from the EPA in 2014. Then saw litigation, saw EPA come back, withdraw its preemptive veto on the account of Pebble would put forth a permitting application. They did so. They went through a lengthy environmental impact statement process. Ultimately, for dozens and dozens of agencies and permitters, involved. Ultimately, there was an EIS produced. Remember, EISs are thousands of pages. They take ample years. They have multiple subject areas. They have every agency you could possibly dream up of and every acronym involved in putting an EIS together. And ultimately, an EIS was produced that concluded that the mine could be built without harming the fishery.
Which that seems like a miracle compared to what some of the environmentalists were telling the public.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's a modern engineering marvel, no question. I mean, it is so technical and detailed, and the mining proposal is technical. So after that EIS that concluded the mine could be built safely, there was a record of decision by the Corps of Engineers denying Pebble's permit, not consistent with an EIS that it participated in and was the lead agency on. So there's a lot of other steps and details associated with that. But so we maintain.
Now, were you surprised by that, or did you all kind of see that coming?
I would say, I'm trying to rewalk those steps. We did not see it coming once seeing a favorable EIS. That leads you to believe that, hey, all of these agencies decided it could be done. Yeah. And you have a record of decision say, essentially, like, we were wrong. That EIS, we weren't right there. We're not going to, that is a pivot away from the EIS, which is an entirely political and not scientific decision. So to have a political decision lacking science and not consistent with the scientific document is a huge issue. It's not just discouraging. It is a huge issue. And really, it's the reason that you have seen across the board industries, trade associations, and others that actually don't have mining member companies and don't work on mining issues come out and raise a flag and say, this is wrong, because they know that at any given time, a project that has any sort of controversy associated with it, an oil field, oil exploration project on the North Slope, something near a fishery, anything that anybody opposes anywhere can start to see what happened at Pebble. And now there is a blueprint for those that oppose resource development to use on any project they don't like. So it has always been about the process with Pebble. Yes, it is a tremendous copper resource. Yes, it would have amazing environmental benefits for a region of Alaska that is very, economically disadvantaged. But number one, hands down, this is about our resource development process and how resource development projects are permitted in the United States.
So do you think there's a sliver of hope of it still potentially happening?
I think, you asked me a question a couple of minutes ago about the critical minerals needed. And I mentioned that copper is one of the most important things we need and we don't produce enough of. I think that there is starting to be a bit of an awareness that we need all of this copper. We get so much of it from China. And the United States has said no to 3 of the largest copper proposals, Pebble being one being in Minnesota and one being in Arizona, in the last couple of years. And, we're seeing this kind of start to happen with the Ambler Access Project to huge copper deposits out there as well. So I think there's starting to be a bit more of an awareness of like, we don't have enough copper. And that is a prolific resource. And I don't know if it's going to be developed in my lifetime, but I believe it will be developed one day.
Nice. So you just had a very successful Alaska Miners Association convention, which I'm sure was probably the first one maybe since COVID. I was at a couple election parties and saw some of the events that were happening. Seems like they're salt of the earth kind of folks. I had a chance to talk to just, in passing some of them. Talk to me a little bit about the convention and why you think it was so successful.
Yeah, it was our first one since 2019. They're held in November when they're held. And so our last one was November 2019. And we had, it was pretty evident early on in 2020, we all can remember where we were in April or May. And it's like, no way are we having a convention this year. And we had what we thought was a once in a lifetime virtual convention. Like, thank God that's behind us. We'll never have to do that again. And then in 2021, we had to cancel it again, which was heartbreaking and unexpected. So to be able to come back and do this one, people were so ready. A lot of people last Monday saw each other for the first time in 3 years. We've been on Zooms like we are right now. We've been on phone calls. We've been in Facebook communication and that kind of thing, but had not seen the whites of each other's eyes in 3 years. So it was amazing. We had about 1,200 people. People travel from all over the world and all over the country and all over the state to be together for those 4 days. And it was absolutely amazing to be together again, to look at all of the various mining activity happening in the state, to talk about some of our high level issues. It's always incredibly nerve-wracking to have it take place the same week as the election.
Yeah.
Like, what's going to happen? And I've been at AMA long enough that I remember what it was like when Obama was reelected, and we're like, oh God, 4 more years of just this really hard federal regulatory regime. And then when Trump was elected, it was like, whoo. And so it's been, it's always, you're like very unknown what's going to happen with the election, but it's also really exciting to have all of those updates happening, those policymakers stop into AMA and talk about their views on mining. And so it was fantastic. We're still kind of on cloud 9 about it.
That's awesome. So let's say, we have somebody listening today, maybe they're a student at UAA, maybe they want to start gold mining in Hope, Alaska or something like that. How does somebody get involved in your association? What does that look like? I know you have memberships all the way from student to somebody that's like, a corporate entity that's, producing a lot of minerals. So talk to me a little bit about that.
So first of all, I would definitely go to our website and get this information. But we have branch meetings on Friday mornings around the state in Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau for an hour. And the local members of the local chapters come in and sit in the room and talk about anything under the sun related to mining. And that is a great way to get contacts, to learn more about the industry. And those meetings, those membership meetings really do build a presence for young people in Alaska. So our website is alaskaminers.org. It has the schedule of the meetings that you can come to and get involved in and that kind of thing. And really, any young person or any person that's not already, absorbed in our industry but is curious, I guarantee you the miners are the most welcoming, open-armed people. They will give you all the time in the world. Trust me, because this happened to me. I lived it. They have all the time in the world for you to sit there and talk about mining, educate you on anything that you're willing to listen to. If you meet a miner, you're going to have a friend for life.
Yeah, when my family and I went to Hope, we go to Hope a lot in the summer, and we met a, just kind of like a miner that does it for fun. And he showed my kids all of his equipment and showed them how to do the gold thing. And, this is somebody I'd known for maybe 5 minutes, and they were just so excited to show the process of taking a bunch of dirt from a riverbed and developing it into gold. So I agree, they're definitely the salt of the earth folks. And we wish you nothing but success. Must Read Alaska is a big fan of the Alaska Miners Association. Our folks that read, listen, and watch Must Read Alaska are big fans of what you do. So we hope and wish for nothing but success for you. Do you have any last minute things before we head off here that you want to make sure you share?
No, I really appreciate you giving me the time today. I just would encourage, I know everyone that listens to you guys is probably already aware of this, but just pay attention and take the time to research both sides of an issue. And I think you'll find that mining industry really does have a responsible track record here in Alaska and really enjoys being your neighbor. So I just appreciate all that Must Read Alaska does to cover our industry and to support our issues and our causes.
Awesome. Well, the mining in the USA probably has the highest standards anywhere around the world. And so I always find it funny when folks don't want to have a mining project, but they want to drive around their Prius and wear their Patagonia sweatshirt. But, that's for another topic. I guess
you get to have it both ways.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us. Very informative, and we wish you nothing but success. For folks listening in, tomorrow I'm going to have Mayor Rodney Dial on, and then Donna Arduin on Friday. So you want to tune in there. Until next time, I'm John Quick from Somewhere in Alaska. Thank you so much for joining us today.